Hey, what's up, guys? I hope you're enjoying the Be the Difference podcast. If you are, I got a huge favor to ask. Go on to Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star review for us. It helps us immensely with algorithms and growth because we grow completely by word of mouth, organically. That's why there are no ads. Also, feel free to share this content with somebody you think might get value out of it. Last, if you don't know, I also do coaching to help people become the best version of themselves, starting with physical fitness, going all the way through mindset, sales, and leadership. If you're interested in learning more, there's going to be a link in the description of the podcast. You can schedule a time. It's a free assessment. All I'm going to do is have a conversation with you and see if I can even help you. I look forward to speaking to all of you. Continue to enjoy the podcast, and remember to always be the difference. What's up, everyone? It's Greg with Delta, and this is the Be the Difference podcast. This podcast is all about making you a better person in your life and in your business with coaching on sales, leadership, mindset, marketing, everything under the sun when it comes to being an entrepreneur. And we bring on guest speakers. Today, I've got the honor and pleasure of welcoming a very beautiful soul, Miss Susan Gold. Susan, how are you?
I am super excited, especially after that intro, and whoever cut that is like, awesome. I have to have that right away.
I actually made that myself.
Are you serious?
I did. Yeah. I did art in college. A lot of people don't know I was an art major in college. I did art. I used to draw and paint. I wanted to be a comic book artist, actually. I was big into art, and I did a lot of digital production. Like, I learned it back in the day, and this is back. I mean, I've said back in the day, back in early 2000s. All we could, like, there wasn't much video editing software. It was just like Premiere Pro, and Premiere Pro was very rudimentary. So I learned how to use Premiere Pro at a basic level, and then as I've kind of gone, I know enough to be dangerous that I can just look up stuff and it connects. And so I actually made that in Adobe, I think Illustrator. It's been a while since I looked at it. I think it's Illustrator. I'm not sure. Anywho, yeah, I built that and made that. It's pretty.
It is so energizing. I was like rocking in my chair. I was like so excited. Yeah, if it doesn't work out at Delta Financial, you can always have a
Yeah, I know, right? I got options. Yes, I got options. I love it. So for those of you that don't know who Susan is, let me go ahead and introduce her. Author, speaker, and coach, Susan Gold is known for transforming trauma. After leaving a challenging childhood home, she eventually made her way to her dream, New York City, to become known for matching celebrities to brands. As remnants of her past service, Susan faced her own addiction, clinical depression, and narcissistic abuse. Today, she will share how she now views her challenges and challengers as perhaps oddly packaged gifts. I actually love that write-up, and I feel like we're going to have a very deep yet inspirational conversation.
So, Greg, you can cut the video and I'll write the script.
Sounds good. I like it.
Cool.
That's a deal.
So, wow, where should we dive in?
This one of the things that as I was reading that really stuck out to me is how your challenges and challengers are oddly packaged gifts.
Yeah, so that wasn't the immediate knee-jerk reaction. Let's just put it that way. But that's
naturally not in the time, exactly, right?
Yeah, but that's what all of these years of wisdom have garnered for me. And I'm really grateful. I mean, most people in my life have told me, oh, you're so strong. Wow, you have so much power. Wow, as an individual woman, how can you do what you have done? And it took me a long time to really incorporate that into the fabric of my being and understand it. And I think part of that trajectory is to understand that everything that's come along my path has been another piece of the puzzle, and it all connects like perfectly, even though like some of it looks really nasty on the outside.
Yeah, and getting through that, there's a level of intentionality that you really have to be, I guess, focused and disciplined with your thoughts, getting through that and accepting it, right? I think a lot of it's acceptance. That is what I've found, is that when I've had those challenging situations, it's not identifying, it's not like placing a positive or a negative value to it. It's just accepting that it happened, and then almost surrendering to it, like, hey, this is the position I'm in right now, right? Where do I want to be? And then just focusing on that in order to, like, hey, it's happened, I made this mistake, this person made this mistake, whatever, this is what I'm learning from it. Because I found that, like, when I had that same challenge and I tried to just be negative about it, I would spiral, right? To spiral, go out of control, get really negative, and then that negativity just drew the same exact, that's what my mind was focused on, that's what I drew into my life. And it was over, as a constant over and over again, like I'm just seeing the same, and I'm like, what's going on? But when finally I just let go of that negativity, and I'm like, okay, this is what I can take accountability for, this is what I did, I don't care about what they did, right? But it was like almost like life was showing me, this is what you have to learn to get through this situation in order to grow, to become the person, like the 2.0 person you're supposed to be.
Well, that's really well said. And like for me, it was stop eating the rat poison and person to drop dead. Like
Yeah,
I had to literally, it had to be that tangible
yeah,
for me.
it's like drinking battery acid over and over again. Yeah.
Truly, yeah, for sure.
So
But
talk a little bit about the actual trauma, as much as you want to share. We're
oh,
pretty
okay.
candid on here, so as much as vulnerable as you want to get, talk about the trauma that you went through.
Well, it started early, and I just published a memoir that sort of goes into it. It's called Toxic Family: Transforming Childhood Trauma into Adult Freedom. And that's a nasty title. Like when I look at it, it wasn't my title, it's my publisher's title.
Mhm,
And I really feel the family that I came from was perfect for me. I was the middle kid of five,
mhm,
and there were two pseudo adults at the helm doing the best they could. They came from horrible abuse and trauma. So it was basically hurt and damaged children raising hurt and damaged children. And I'll be graphic. I was 4 years old when I realized, wow, I'm really not safe. We were upstairs in the second level. My mom was bathing us one at a time. Poor thing. She was genius. And she was putting my dad through his schooling, first his master's and then his PhD. And then it was going to be her turn. But her turn never came. What came was five kids in very short succession. And my dad, like, God love him, he's an astrophysicist genius. But he was also like Peter Pan. His dad was a tyrant and a bully, didn't really want children. And my dad could never measure up. So his mom, like, overcompensated and really groomed him. And he just felt women were to serve, and serve him mostly. So here was my mom in this drudgery with five kids. It was my turn to get in the bathtub. And I didn't care. It was like halfway full and full of gray water. I didn't care. I was like super excited. I started to squirm. And my mom went from like nurturing, loving as she could be into a tyrant. She grabbed my arm and squeezed it so hard I could feel her thumb in my little bone, and she started to shake me. And she said, Susie, why are you so bad? And she shook me more, and then she began to beat me. And that little room went hot and it went brown. And I saw stars. And I knew that something was really wrong with my mommy, and I wasn't safe, and I had to protect myself. So that was really the first incident
just have to,
that really stands with me.
for a 4-year-old to have to experience that, to realize, like, have that moment of realization where, like, I'm not safe and I have to take care of myself, or I have to protect myself, like, the amount of trauma that you have to go through in that moment to realize that as a 4-year-old is astounding.
I think so. I
Yeah.
think so too. I mean, you and I probably have more than we know in common. My PTSD levels have been pretty intense, and there's been some trauma in the central nervous system that's been pretty hard to unwind.
Mm.
Um, And it continued on in the household. Everybody was doing the best they could, my mom included. I believe she had real issues with mental illness, and she was also given diet pills, which was speed back then.
Yeah.
So she had a lot to handle. And the hard thing was she could be so loving and kind and then flip like that on a dime. So you never really knew what was coming. And so you're right. I was always trying to manage it. And that is a piece that I took into adulthood. The plus of that was I was a bit telepathic. Like I had to read her moods and my dad's moods for my own safety. So that really helped later on when
Do
I
you
went
feel like
into
that came
the
out of necessity? Like you developed that skill out of necessity?
maybe I came in with it. I'm
Yeah.
not quite sure. Each of my siblings, I have three brothers and a sister. We all have very different memories of that home growing up. I mean, I feel bad for my oldest brother because he has almost no memories, almost a complete blackout. I rarely am with them because I live on the other side of the country, but if I'm there, I can engage and we can create some stories and memories together. But most of it is amnesia and he's shut down. And he also was incredibly abused because he foisted that abuse on me. He's probably 4 or 5 years older,
Mhm.
and I was basically like his lab experiment.
Okay.
But it served me. I left the morning after high school. I wanted to go to New York City. I used to watch Barbara Walters on my beanbag chair on my belly in the basement. I just wanted to go to New York and be like Barbara Walters. And I made it. I got out. It was touch and go. I could have hung out there. I got scared, like as it started to come. I thought, wow, I don't know if I have the tools like to make it
Yeah.
outside this crazy household system. But yeah, I kicked myself out.
Nice, nice. And you, so you made it to New York City. You got there. You started achieving your dream. However, all that baggage that you had started catching up. How did it show up in your life?
Well, once I got there, I sort of put my childhood past behind me. It was in carefully constructed compartments.
Mhm.
And then like the same stuff that I saw play out in my family started happening in my own life. I was in abusive relationships for the wrong reasons, obviously.
Mhm.
I had to take a slug from the wine jug to ask for a raise at work, which got me into recovery from alcoholism and addiction. I was using food like a weapon. Um, yeah, it was pretty painful. Like I had to wear sunglasses and have a Walkman headphones in my ears to get around Manhattan. It was also really wild because some of what I had envisioned, like Barbara Walters, she was actually my exercise client on the side. I was training her while I worked at ICM, this really large global talent agency. And my boss there quit, asked me to join him. And that's where I learned how to negotiate overscale celebrity talent deals.
Mhm.
And I rang Barbara's doorbell one morning at 7, and she's like, "What is up with you? Something's up." So I confided in her. My boss had a sexual addiction and he was inviting young actresses in for their casting call, had me leave. It was so awkward and embarrassing. And then he tried the same thing on me. So she said, "I'm coming into work with you today and we're confronting this guy." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm going to be okay. I'll take care of it." So I confronted him that day and he fired me. And I decided Barbara actually offered me an assistantship through her fiance at Lorimar, this big movie company, and it would have been a great break, but I couldn't take the assistant thing, Greg. I just couldn't go there. So I decided to launch my own firm, matching celebrities with brands. And I think I had maybe a couple months of cash in the bank. I was like 25 in New York City, terrified I'd jump back into some abusive relationship with some sugar daddy that was controlling the purse strings. But I didn't. Instead, I somehow met Donnie Deutsch, he's a host and he's an entrepreneur
Mhm.
now, but then he was running his dad's ad agency. And he's like, "I want Andy Warhol to endorse my Pontiac dealership. You think you can get him?" I'm like, "Well, I'll try." So I couldn't get anybody on the phone. I took the subway down to the factory and I knocked on the door. And Fred, Andy's business manager, answered. And he's looking at me out of his horn rimmed spectacles. And he's like, "Yeah, what?" And I'm explaining. He goes, "Come back tomorrow the same time. I'll let you talk to Andy." I'm like, "Great." So next day, knock on the door. Fred has me sit in the foyer, and then he comes out through these double doors, and it's black in there. Like, I was scared. And he goes, "Andy, we'll see you now." And I was like, "Okay." So I went in, and there was Andy Warhol. You would love this because you're an artist. He's penciling, and there's this pin spotlight, and his hair's going 17 directions, kind of like mine is now. And these three pugs were running around the studio. And that's all he cared about. There I was blathering on about this dumb commercial and, why I was there. And these pugs would like tug on his pants and he'd lift them up. That's all he cared about. And he'd hold these little babies, in his arms. So finally, he stops. And it's the first time he looks me in the eye and he goes, "Not really. Why should I do this?" And I said, "Because you can have the pugs in the shot with you." And he goes, "Okay, I'll do it." And that was the deal that like got the career launched.
Nice. Too bad for Pontiac.
Donnie still says that's the best deal he's ever made. Notice.
Yeah.
That's
Too
okay.
bad for Pontiac. They didn't make it. I always wanted a Pontiac. I was a big Firebird fan. Actually,
Oh, no kidding.
I had a Grand Am. When I was in college, I bought a brand new Grand Am GT and I put like a supercharger on it. I thought it was cool. Had a, I was it was like my baby. And then I got married and had a kid and I gave it to my parents and I went and got a little beat up like a Ford Bronco or some crap. I don't even
Oh,
remember.
isn't that interesting? Yeah, because you got to
Yeah,
fit the mold. What color was that car?
it was white. It was white with
Ooh.
black racing stripes.
And how did you afford to buy that car in college? I've got to ask.
They had a deal. It was 0% interest for brand new cars that were, and it was like right at the end of the year. So they were about to get the new shipment in. So I was like, hey, um, this was in 2003.
Okay.
And so they were like, hey, any '03 cars that are still brand new that we haven't sold, we have a deal where we'll give you 0% financing for as long as you put this much down. And so at the time I was a server and a bartender at Ruby Tuesday, and I was making pretty good money at this serving, and I was really good at getting tips. But then I also had a stipend that I got because I was an RTC scholarship, and they pay you a monthly stipend tax free. And so I got like $350 a month, and my payments were like 325 for that car. And so I basically it was like it took up my whole stipend and then all the money that I wanted to like I was a full ride scholarship. My college dorm was paid for. I ate on campus. Everything was paid for. All I had to do is basically just like if I wanted to go out and do anything or gas, pay for the car, pay for insurance, pay for my phone. That was about it. And so everything else came out of me serving and just getting tips.
Oh my
So
gosh. Great with the finances even back then. Just a natural knack for it all. Who
yeah.
would figure an artist would have that capability?
Yeah, I know, right? I loved that car. That was my baby. But
Yeah, what would
at the
happen if you
time.
try to go back now and buy it? Ooh.
Yeah, knowing what I know now, I wouldn't buy that car. But I was just such a big Pontiac fan because I love Firebirds. I love Trans Ams. My brother had a Firebird growing up. I think it's why I love him. So I have an older brother who is 8 years older than me, and
Oh,
so when I was about 8 years old, he was 16, and he got his first car was a Firebird with T tops. And he was like my older brother was like the coolest kid. You know what I'm saying? Like I thought the world of him. And him and I still get along. Like we were really close. And I was the youngest, and he's like 3 older than me, and out of 6 kids.
oh.
So um he was still really close with me that he would be like, "Hey, Greg, you want to go for a ride?" And his little 8-year-old brother, and he would just take me and drive around. And like this is back in the day when like CD players in cars were like brand new, and he got a CD player for his car, which was like unheard of. And he had this like stereo system that sounded great. And he would take off the T tops, and we would just drive around the town just for no reason, just to drive. And I just had these really fond memories of driving around that Firebird with him. And I was like, this is the coolest ever. I was like, I want to get a Firebird just like my brother. And yeah, I never got one, but
It's not too late.
that's true. It's not too late. I guess I could always get an old one and remodel it and restore it, you know. Um, but now that I look at now, like my other taste, I always wanted a really old Stingray. I really like the really old
Oh.
Stingrays. So I always want to get like restored, like completely restore it and make it a little bit more modern. But yeah, those old Stingrays
Mm.
are nice. So
So I'm not a car person,
oh really?
but but I do love my car now, and I will never have to buy another, and I'm
What'd
so
you get?
grateful. I got the Tesla Model Y.
Okay, so I really want to get the Model X. We're talking about all kinds of random stuff right now, which is fine for me. But I want to get the Model X really bad. But I want to get like the completely like I want to get with the plaid mode, auto
Oh, yeah.
driving, like it's like 150,000, and I'm like, you know what? I really want to get that. I want to
Okay,
get the
well, that's
SUV.
possible. That's
It
totally
is it's
possible.
100% possible.
Yeah.
So I've been wanting to get a Tesla for a while. You know what? A lot of people complain, especially car enthusiasts. They complain because it doesn't feel like it doesn't have the sound, it doesn't have the feel, like. But I actually enjoy driving it. Like I like how quickly it whips around. I enjoy it.
Honey, it's fast, but it's not a car from Montana. I ordered it when I lived in California,
Mhm.
and it took like 9 months, and I'm grateful it took that long because I saved a lot of money being a Montana resident taking ownership here versus California. Also, the price went up while I was waiting, but there's a lot of dust in Montana, and there's a lot of wildlife.
Oh yeah,
So,
yeah.
but it's pretty cool to like you can sort of dodge the deer,
Mhm.
if you because it goes really fast, like you said. Yeah, it's a
It's
nice car.
they're nice to whip around in. But
Yeah,
so you got your deal.
yeah.
You got your big break. You start your company. Is it smooth sailing from there? Or is there still
Are you kidding me?
still more
so
on the horizon?
so at the same time, remember I told you I took a slug from the wine jug, and that was like a red flag for me.
Yeah.
So I had to face down addiction. I had to get clean, and I was getting clean in all this, which was really scary because like I didn't go anywhere without a drink in my hand or knowing there was going to be a drink at the other end of the table. Like I couldn't talk to you. My throat was so tight with anxiety, and I really thought it made me happy. So it took me a minute to recognize that. And I got professional help to help me see it, which is really lucky because some people go for years and all
Yeah.
kinds of therapeutic modalities and they still don't realize, well, it's the alcohol that's the issue. So I was putting that down. And then 4.5 years clean, I went to my first treatment center because I was in a deal. I was brokering talent. There was a big pharma company that was coming to Texas to announce their big, mega merger with another UK company. And I was throwing together all the talent and I had contracts all over. I was doing buy sells and it was like being in the middle of my parents trying to break up their fights. And I fell apart. I like became suicidally depressed, split out of my body. My friends had to confront me and they sent me to a treatment center in Florida where I picked up some more tools, but realized that I had to get some help with medication, which I did not want to take. I didn't think you could be sober and take medication, and I didn't want to take medication. But this 17-year-old little angel with beautiful ringlets in her hair, one morning, she was there for like her fourth, attempt at getting clean from heroin. I felt so horrible for her, but she was an amazing messenger. And she said, if you came to this hospital and had the symptoms that you do, and they did blood work and they said, you're deficient in serotonin and we can boost that up with this medication. Would you take it? I'm like, now that you put it that way. And so that was like 10 years, Greg, off and on of antidepressant medication just to get me to a level playing field. But the great thing was I learned what the symptoms of depression were, like
Mm.
pulling away from my support group, the anxiety in the back of the throat, feeling less than, feeling shame, feeling that like gray pallor
Yeah.
over my skin, no matter how many marathons I was running, to keep my esteem up. And, the
Feeling a
picture.
loss of control in your life.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. So I had to surrender and I surrendered good, but then I got to the point where I knew the warning signs so I didn't slip down into the depths of depression, and I've used that moving forward in my career and personally
Did
to
you
sort of.
realize at the time that the reason that those mergers that you were trying when you're trying to broker those mergers and it felt like you were back as a kid with your parents and like trying to like manage the situation as you had put it. Did you realize then that this was a trigger for your past trauma that you basically compartmentalized and blocked away? That was causing you to become so depressed that you were feeling suicidal?
So I felt the body sensations.
Yeah.
There was an incident when I was in seventh grade and I shared a bedroom with my sister. I was on the bottom bunk, she was on the top. And all of a sudden, I hear my parents like right outside our room. And my mom is screaming for my dad not to kill her.
Mm.
So I jumped out of my bed and I opened my door, and my dad's in a drunken stupor with a knife like this over his head, and my mom on her knees, like begging for her life. And that was what was triggered in that deal. It took me a minute to go back and tease that out, because that was buried. But yeah, I mean, I have the incident clear. Sometimes I don't have the incident, I just have sensation. It's
Yeah.
kind of like Sherlock Holmes sometimes, putting it all together.
Yeah.
Um,
It's almost like
but
it's really locked in the subconscious.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but that's what was released, and that's what I came to know, and thank God I could air that out, and get some grounding and gain more strength as a human being, more compassion for what my inner being went through and
Mm.
experienced, and also compassion for my parents to be enmeshed in that kind of horrendous anger and rage and hatred. And it wasn't just coming from them, it was like past lineages dumped and being lived through them.
Yeah.
So this was another way for me to escape that matrix, so to speak, in adulthood
That's
and
a
find
good way
some
to put
freedom.
it. That's a good way to put it. It's very powerful that thank you for sharing that and being very vulnerable and talking about that. Um, Something that I don't talk about this often. I have talked about it on a podcast before, not on my podcast, but I've been on guests in other podcasts where I talked about this. But um, I had issues with suicidal ideations and with suicide. And what I found was it's so quick how the thought transforms and it's almost like it leaps to the next thought, to the next thought, to the next thought. And it just spirals to like what a thought of like depression or unhappiness turns into like, nobody loves me or no one wants me here to like, I don't want to be here to how can I not be here to before you know it, you're on Google, like finding ways that you can like peacefully end your life and not like and just go fall asleep and never wake up. And I found myself going down that and it's like gravity. It's like just kind of falling in. And before you know it, like you're way farther than you thought. And getting out of that is very difficult. It can be very difficult, but it can also, like you're saying, when you start to work on yourself and you start to have that transformation, you see things from a different lens, from a different perspective. So like you seeing your parents and feeling like, man, the amount of pain that they're going through, the amount of suffering that they're holding on to, not just from their lives, but from their their lives with their parents, their lineage, etc., that they're holding on to, that's just been kind of forced on down the line. You see it. It's almost like like you saying escaping the matrix is probably the best way. It's like you're seeing the code. You're seeing all the ones and zeros, and you're just like, whoa. And it's crazy when you start to see things from that perspective, because I can usually talk to somebody and I can just be like, man, you're in a lot of pain. And like they're trying real hard to mask it, but I can just, it's almost like energy waves coming off of them. It's like you just feel it. It's like there's a lot of trauma there. Like you're in a tough spot. Let's talk, you know. And it's really powerful. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, I mean, if there's any way that I can help people, brands and individuals, doesn't matter, it's the
Yeah,
same. Drop that bag of crap that we're carrying, that bag of intense shame and sadness and trauma.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm here to do it. I feel like that's part of the reason I've lived through the trajectory that I have. And once you've been through it and you get that kind of experience, the amount of compassion that you have for human beings is astounding. It's like I'm walking in a whole new zip code. I'll just speak for myself. And it came up again, not so much through a business deal. This was more personal. But the man that I fell in love with and had my son with, I thought I found my Prince Charming, and his mask fell. And it got pretty intense, the last like month, when he realized, wow, yeah, I'm not going to be able to get out of this mess that I've created. She's really going to go through with it. He became more desperate, and I became more suicidal for standing up for myself. But because of that experience, I knew I could put a friend in place for every day of the week, and I would call them and check in, because I was experiencing the suicidal thoughts. And if I felt like I was going to take an action, I would commit to call the next person if I didn't get them on the phone. And that literally saved me.
yeah.
And I feel like, yeah, I mean, part of my trajectory is to share this with other people so they're not suffering. I mean, there is a way through, and it's gotten so much better. It always does. It's just like, can you hold on till the miracle, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, I mean, you're best suited to help the person that you were, to get through the challenges that you got through and through the experiences. And that's what I found through, I started coaching. And what I found is that when people share their story, there's a lot of similarities. I'm just like, man, a lot of the same vices and demons that they're feeding into and holding on to, and a lot of the same trauma, the same bad behaviors, which is keeping them in that perpetuate cycle of sorrow and grief and guilt and shame, like you're talking about. A lot of times we do things that cause us to stay in that cycle in order to ignore doing the work and like acknowledging it and letting it go, like like letting that bag of shit go, like you're saying. Because it takes acknowledgement, right? It takes that it's there, and it's like we'd rather compartmentalize it and ignore it and be like, nope, not there, and then just keep doing the same exact activities of the drinking, meaningless sex, the porn addiction, video game addiction, food addiction, whatever addiction it is. Like it's out there, and we feed into those same bad habits. And I've been able to have some really just in depth and intimate conversations with people and see that we're all the same. We're all having a lot of the same issues and a lot of the same vices and demons that are haunting us. And having someone there to say, hey, I've been through this, let me show you a way, right? Let me show you how I got through it. And hopefully, it helps you to become the best version of yourself and level up, and basically take control of your life. So
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really, it's intense to see it at the celebrity level, because I had the opportunity to engage with many figures that are household names that people know, and they have to do it in public. Like, and people don't realize they put their pants on one leg at a time, just like we do, but they're doing it like out in front of everybody.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think just
Which I'm sure was
opening.
wild to experience when you and for you to experience that side, that side of, celebrities to just a wild experience.
Yeah, I was there for a reason, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we all are at the times that we are where we're supposed to be, and the like the universe, life, God, whoever put us in that space, either to grow, to learn, to make an impact on somebody, something.
Yeah, and that's totally how I see it. I feel like almost in a way, Greg, that there was like a plan before I came in. Okay, this time around, you'll learn how to really understand your own power authentically. You'll learn how to love yourself.
Yeah.
Ick, really? Okay.
And
Okay, I'll
that's
do
a
it.
good point. It's about loving yourself, right? Love comes from the inside, not from the outside.
Oh
Right.
my gosh, that was such a revelation. Yeah,
Yeah.
I spent so much time working from the outside in
Yeah.
because the thought of working inside out, and all that stuff about look in the mirror and tell yourself you love you, all that stuff used to make me want to, yeah, no.
It's when you see it like that, it seems like kind of frou-frou. You're like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, I love myself." But honestly, like the true feeling of love and acceptance comes from within, and it's that it starts with you. It's kind of like leadership, right? And I always tell people there's levels of leadership. The first level of leadership is you have to lead yourself first. You can't lead yourself, you're definitely not leading other people, right? It's just not happening. And then once you can lead other people, then you start to teach them how to build leaders. So once you've built them into leaders, you teach them how to duplicate and replicate, so on and so forth. So there's levels of leadership. This is the same thing. You you cannot start looking for love or loving other people if you don't love yourself. But once you learn that that's where it comes from, and it's abundant, and it's so much more transformational. It's not the frou-frou, like, oh, say, like, look at the mirror and say affirmations and I love myself every day. Like, it's not that, it's completely different. It's hard to explain. A good book that talks about it actually is The Power of Now by Eckhart
Oh
Tolle.
yeah, Eckhart Tolle. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it really came from the School of Hard Knocks. I was a long time meditator, sat in silence for a week at a time, 10 days, all that stuff. I mean, I was doing triathlons and, marathons, and I became a nationally ranked master swimmer as an adult because I was training like an NC2A athlete. I had this like, it looked like glamorous from the outside career as the television producer and then in feature film as well. But it didn't come from that stuff. It came from landing on a mattress on my floor on a partial conversion in the garage of the home I bought, paid for, and maintained for my family. While my ex husband to be, who I consider one of my greatest gurus of all time, held court in the master bedroom for 1 year until I could write him his six-figure check and he could move on. And that experience was the one. That was the billboard it took to fall on my head to realize what low self-worth and esteem I had, to realize my value and my authentic power as a human being,
Yeah.
and to wake up. That's how I found self love. It was like everything in my life, all those puzzle pieces. And that was a big major piece, a corner piece came together, Greg.
Everyone has that moment
What
that,
was yours? What was yours
oh
so
man.
far? So far. You're young.
Um, so I had a woman that I was dating. So after
Uh-huh.
I got a divorce, and then after my divorce, I started dating. I got married when I was 20, in college,
Mm.
and when I was 20, just to be kind of candid, I was a different person than I am now. I didn't have the same confidence. I didn't even look the same. I was 60, 70 pounds lighter than I am now. I was a
Oh,
beast
wow.
tall. I was like straight because I'm 6'7". I'm a tall guy. I'm like,
No way.
yeah.
Oh, wow.
I was 6'7", about 170. Um, I look like somebody. You ever seen The Machinist, where he's like real? That's what I look like walking around, and like people would like, and I got attention everywhere I go because I'm so tall, but I'm also so thin. I look
Yeah.
like a walking stick, and people would come up like, "Man, you look like you play basketball," all the time, and I was very self
Mm.
conscious. And so I always had this feeling like it was hard for me to get girlfriends, hard for me to talk to people. Like I was really, really self-conscious. And I think what kind of broke me on my shell was becoming a server. So that's how I learned to talk to people and
Wow.
and just like and kind of joke around and show my personality and get them to like tip me more because that's how I made money. And
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
and for anyone listening, if you're wanting to be an entrepreneur, it's probably the best thing you do is go become a server to learn how
Oh,
to talk.
I agree totally. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
go be a server. It also gives you some respect for the for wait staff. So, um, I had a girlfriend in college that I met. We knew each other in high school, and then we started dating. And we just kind of attached to each other. And I in my mind, it's like I don't think I'm going to get anything better. Like I'm settling, and I did, and so we got pregnant. We had a shotgun
Mm,
wedding. We end up having
mm,
we get stay married. We go in the
mm,
military. We end up having 4 kids together, and there's nothing wrong. Like my ex-wife, beautiful soul. We just weren't meant to spend our lives together, and it's just that
mm,
simple, right? But
mhm,
but being with her for a decade plus, getting out now when we divorced, I'm in my 30s. I hadn't dated since I was 20 years old, and like actually like 19 because we were together so long, and so it's been over a decade. I'm like 31, 32 now. And I'm just like, I'm going to go nuts. So what did I do? I just started like partying,
mm,
drinking, going to
mm,
bars, like dating. I was not single for longer than a 48, 72 hour period. I was not single. I was with
mm,
somebody, and it was a constant barrage of women and drinking and alcohol. And
mhm,
so I was in the military. I got out of the military, and when I was getting out, the last 2 weeks of me getting out, I was with this woman, and I wanted her to get out of the military with me. She was in the military with me, and she didn't. And so I was like, we split amicably. And that night, I went to a bar and I met another woman that night. And so I was like, well, got 2 weeks left. Might as well have fun, right? So we
mhm,
spent the 2 weeks before I left and I came to Dallas. And when I came here, her and I kept talking. And we kept texting for about 3, 4 days after I arrived. And I was like, man, I miss you. And she's like, I miss you too. And she was like, what do you think about me just coming to visit? And I was like, you want to come here? She's like, well, there's nothing holding me here. Like, there's no reason for me to stay here. She's like, I can just move there. So she packed up a U-Haul and she had a daughter that was like 1 years old at the time.
mm, mm,
Packed up her U-Haul and she came and she moved into my house that I got here. And the worst decision ever. We were not compatible. The relationship went south quick, and I felt trapped. I felt like, man, now I just taken responsibility for this other human being and their kid. Now I'm dad. I was dad to this extra kid because the father wasn't in the picture, and it just caused I was slowly pulling away, and it was causing fights, and I wasn't like in the relationship, and the fights would like raise my anxiety, my PTSD. I wasn't being treated. I would spiral out of control. I still had all these issues from the previous marriage and like the abandonment, and I was constantly seeking other people to make me feel loved in order to make me feel good, right? And that was the problem, is that I didn't have any self-worth. And it came to a head when one evening one day morning we got into a fight, and we were going to breakfast, and she was like, turn around. So I literally like I did a U on a friggin' interstate, like crossed over the grass because she was screaming at me in the car, and I was like, skirt. I did a U, like went through the grass and came on the other side. And she was like screaming at me, and then she was like, I'm done. I'm fucking done. Like screaming at me. And I'm just like,
mm.
and I'm driving. It's like I get home. She runs upstairs. She takes her daughter, puts her in her bedroom with the TV on. She goes to our bedroom, closes and locks the door. And it's like 10 o'clock. We were gonna go to brunch,
Oh,
right?
man.
So what do? I go over to the I just had got a brand new bottle, a brand new like handle of Jack Daniels. This is my drink, choice, Jack Daniels.
Mm-hmm.
So I cracked that thing open and I start drinking. I drank like half that bottle between 10 a.m. and like 5 p.m. I drank like half that bottle. And I was on the phone just talking to people. I was stressed out and I'm spiraling and I'm just like, I'm feeling these feelings. And so I ended up wanting to leave and I had to go to work. Actually, I had to go I was a brand new insurance agent. I had to go to do an appointment. And I was like, I want to go to the appointment. I'm like, I'm heavily drunk, but I'm still walking. I'm not like slurring speech, but you can tell like you've been drinking. So I go upstairs and I start changing. She's like, where are you going? I was like, I'm going to appointment. And she was like, you've been drinking. And I was like, I'm fine. And she was like, you're not driving. I'll drive you. And I was like, no, you don't want to talk to me. Like, no, you're not driving me. Like, I'll do it myself. And so it starts this conversation. And so I'm like, you know what? This is the time. So I decide during this moment in time, I like whatever. I'm like, you know what? Let me explain to you why I'm drinking and like what this does to me and why I feel like I'm spiraling and like my inner feelings, right? I'm like, I'm a Cancer at heart. So like, I like to talk about my feelings. So it doesn't bother me. So I'm sitting there, I'm trying to explain it to her, like how I feel about this. Right. And I can tell like, as I'm talking, like how I like, I'm having these thoughts and they're suicidal. Like it's spiraling me out of control and I'm trying to like control it, but I'm losing it. Like I'm barely gripping on. Like I'm trying to tell her. And I was explaining to her and I just see her face just go deadpan. Like at first she's like, talk to me. Then she was like, and I finished and she was like, well, why don't you just go slit your fucking wrist then?
Oh,
and I was
my
like,
God.
that's the sign. That's the sign. So I was just like, yep, it's time. Let's do this. So I went to my closet. I pulled out, and I didn't even say anything. I just looked at her dumbfounded, and I was like, all right. And I walked over, like calmly walked to my closet. I pulled out my pistol. It's in a locked case, and she's like, "What are you doing?" And I pull out my keys, and I'm unlocking it. I'm opening it up. I'm taking the pistol out, and I'm like, and as she was like, "What are you doing? What?" And she's like freaking out, and I'm just like not even talking to her. Just unlocking my pistol, and I like lock and load it, put it to my head, and she's screaming, and she goes and calls 911, and so in my mind, at this point, I'm like getting upset, right? Because I'm like, no, you want me to kill myself? You're watching this, right? Like you get to see this, right? This is what you wanted, and so I'm like, no, you're gonna watch it. I was crazy. It was just the most insane experience. So I go and like open the door. She had like barricaded it. I pushed it open, and I'm like, no, you want to watch? You want to see this? And I'm like holding the gun to my head and I'm freaking out. I'm screaming, and she's in the corner with her daughter screaming. Like the 911 operators on the phone, on speakerphones, like, man, we have police coming down. And I'm like, with that, and I had this like moment. I was like, what in the hell is going on? And I just snapped out of it. And I stopped and I closed the door and I went downstairs and I sat outside on my back patio and I called my buddy. And I was like, dude, fucked up. That's it. And like, I was like, she called the cops. Cops were on the way. And he was like, did you do anything? I was like, well, no. He was like, did you hurt him? I was like, no. Hurt yourself? No. He was like, it's fine, man. Just fucking go talk to cops. And I was like, no, man, this is it. I can't do this anymore. Like, I don't even want to be here. He's like, bro, you haven't done anything. Relax. Unload the gun. Go talk to cops. And as I'm talking to him, it's like cop car. There's like 10 cars on our road. They get on mega speakers. They're like, Red Birch, gotta come out, their hands up. Oh, it was insanity. But that moment in time, I go inside, I unload my weapon. The cops call me. I answer. They're like, come on out. So I did. And as soon as I walked outside, it like this wave of emotion hit me. And I just started bawling like a baby, like uncontrollable sobs, snot coming out. Just I couldn't hold it in. And I was just bawling. And the guy's like, he looks at me and then my door is wide open. My front door, I didn't even close it. And he looks and there's a picture above me. It's a huge picture. It's my company guidon when I was in command. And you can see it. You could see straight in because it was hanging in the living room right above the TV. And he looks at me. He's like, did you serve? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, do you deploy? I was like, yeah. He was like, do you you get help, bro? And I was like, no. He was like, bro, you brought some shit back. You need some help. Like you need to go get some therapy. And he was very kind. And so that's when I started going to therapy. And that was the moment when I was like, I need to start working on myself. And ultimately I tried to work that relationship out. It didn't. We ended up breaking up naturally. And I still kind of, it wasn't like a straight shot, like, oh, I'm working myself, I'm good now. No, this was a constant battle that was in 2018, and from that moment, she called my ex-wife and told my ex-wife about that. And my ex-wife was like, hey, you're not safe to have the kids. I'm putting a protective custody order. I'm taking the custody from you. And I went on a custody battle for 4 years until 2021, till the end of 2021, getting my custody back. And I was angry and I was upset and I was blaming everyone. Like she did this. And ultimately what it came down to, that was on me. It was my fault. And when I started taking accountability for those actions, when I started taking responsibility for it, and I started working on myself, guess what? I got my custody back. I got better custody, actually. I got better. So, like, all these things started to get better. And I was able to repair the relationship. Like, I had a damaged relationship with my ex-wife, which we used to have a great one. And then they got really damaged because of this. Because I was like, why are you doing this? Like, And now it's even better. Like, when I go to Florida, I stay in the house with her and her husband. Like we all stay together. Like we're all like one family. And the kids love it and we love it. And like her kids, they have 2 kids together. They call me Daddy Greg. And so like we go out and like when I go, I'll be like, hey, you want to go for a ride, Gerard? And I'm like, yeah. He like jump in the car with me. We're like, let's go to the store, go grab something. And like I go hang out with their kids too. Like we're all like one family. And it took for me to go through some really challenging times, kind of look back and be like, man, the problem isn't all these other people. The problem is me and my actions. And so when I started working on that, and even if somebody else did something, I cannot take accountability for their actions. I can't hold them accountable for them. It's not my responsibility. It's theirs. So that's kind of a highlight, which I haven't heard of this podcast before. So
that is it's first of all, thank you for the honor of hearing in depth, in detail, and for you revealing yourself that way to allow me and your listeners to see into you that way. And you have just impacted someone that's listening in a true and authentic way. And I feel like that's what's missing. We're all holding it back and nobody's got a clue. And that's one of the reasons I wrote the book. And you're right. It's all on us. There's so many reasons I have a chance to throw it out to the other person, to the challenger and to the challenges. And it's not those, just like you've demonstrated, those are the greatest gifts if you're able to stand up to it.
It was difficult. It was difficult to look at that self and like literally take accountability for all those things and say like, this was on me. Cause it was so easy to say like, well, she said this to me. Like that was terrible that she said that to me. Like I was justified in being angry, but did I have to go get a gun and put it to my head? Did I, did I have to drink a half a bottle of Jack Daniels from 10 to 5 during the day because to self-soothe, right? I could have done, there's a million different things I could have done. I could have been like, no, I'm getting out of the house. I'm going to go, you know what? We were going to go to brunch. I'm going to brunch by myself. Like, I'm going to go enjoy the day by myself. I'm going to go to the city. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do something productive. I'm going to go for a run. Like there's so many more productive actions I could have done, but instead I closed off and I went towards those things, those demons and those vices that always perpetuated the same exact behaviors, which got me to that position in the first place.
Yeah, it had to get that big. It had to get that big and dramatic. Yeah. I mean, you had to take that movie all the way out.
I did.
But look where you are now as a result of it.
Yeah. And I had to go through that to get to where I am now, basically.
Yeah. It's like life review here on Earth. Why wait till you get upstairs? Yeah, exactly. Do it now.
Exactly.
Oh, wow. This is phenomenal. This has been such a gift. Oh my
It has
gosh.
been. Thank you so much for jumping on the podcast and sharing your story. If anyone wants to learn more about your story or follow you or look at you for coaching, because they have trauma of their own that they're working through, what's the best way that they can contact you?
Go to susangold.us. That's susangold.us. It's all there and it's that simple. And you can even contact me and have a 15-minute conversation just to connect. Because a lot of times that's all it's about, just a connection. So susangold.us is it.
Yeah. Awesome. And last question I ask all my guests. If you have the opportunity to sit with, learn from, break bread with 3 individuals, anyone in history, alive or deceased, who would they be and why?
Oh, well, Joan of Arc.
Okay.
Of
Yeah.
course. My middle name is Joan. She's a hero. Rosa Parks. Like, how super cool is that woman? Susan B. Anthony. I'm sorry they're all women, but what can I
Hey,
say?
that's
Susan
fine.
B. Anthony.
That's fine. So
And if I come back again, I'll try to bring some
I
guys
think we
that I
should, because
really.
I feel like we could just talk for a while, Susan, to be honest. I think that we could sit here and just, because we were, for those of you watching, this doesn't happen very often, but usually I come on, I say, hey, this is what the podcast is about. We sit backstage for a second, we talk, and then we jump right in. Susan and I talked for like, what, 15 minutes? Just kind of just joking around. And we were like, we should probably start the recording now. I was like, yeah, we can just continue this conversation. So
Details.
yeah, definitely. It was like kindred spirits. We just met. We're like, hey, what's up?
Yeah, I think I was your mama in another life.
So it's funny is that my oldest sister, she's like my second mom. So you're like my third. So because
Uh,
my oldest sibling is my sister, and she was like basically babied me and raised me a little bit from the time until I was
um,
about 5 or 6. And so I was like, I saw her as my mom for a very long time because my mom was always like working and she was going to school and she was getting her master's degree in psychology so that she could become a psychologist and X, Y, Z. But neither here nor there. But thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Susan, for this conversation. This was phenomenal. It's one of my favorite episodes, and the amount of transparency that you showed with your situation, and I know that this is going to help a lot of people that listen to it. And if you're watching right now, obviously you got some value from this. Obviously, you learned something, you grow, and hopefully these stories can help you to get through what you're currently experiencing in life because understand that you're not alone, and the trauma that you're facing is, I'm telling you, there is greatness just on the other side of that fear of facing it and accepting it. And there's greatness on the other side of how you can also serve other people to help them through it as well. So if you got any value from this, then do me a favor, share this content with somebody else that can also learn and grow and get value and hopefully overcome their demons in their life. And it only takes you about 60 seconds to rate, review, subscribe, and share, but it means the world to both Susan and I. This has been the Be the Difference podcast. I'm your host, Greg Birch. Until next time, we'll see you.